Well, I've got Jeff Lutz on because it is Wednesday, and also both of us have been running like crazy all day, and we'll continue to keep running our buns off the rest of the day. But Jeff found a minute, so let's get let's get going, Jeff. Uh, Exciting stuff today. We've got another mega factory announcement. So, what did
Yeah.
you hear about the mega factory?
Oh, it's in Texas, and I mean they're rapidly expanding capacity. I think this space is very underserved. The TAM is very large, and it's almost like you can't build them fast enough, and you really got to localize them. You really have to do that because the logistics on these things are crazy given the mass. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to see another one, anytime soon. I mean, yeah, I could easily see three in the U.S. I could easily see, multiple other continents getting them.
Yeah, so the interesting thing on this one, well, first of all, the one in Shanghai is twice as large as the one in Lathrop, even though the capacity announced is only the same as Lathrop. Brian Wang and I and others have been speculating, well, maybe they're going to put something else in that building in Shanghai, or maybe
Or it could be phases too. Yeah, it could be in
yeah, it could be
phases.
phase one, phase two, right. Now, the one that they're talking about down in, is it Katy, Texas? Somewhere, I think it's Katy near Houston. This one is 1.6 million square feet,
Yeah,
which is now almost double the one in Shanghai, which is, I think, around 800,000. I think that's about where it is.
yeah.
So once again, we might contemplate whether there's other reasons for needing that amount of space or whether it might be because they haven't announced the capacity for that one, but we could be looking at 40,000 units a year.
Well, the other thing too to think about is just from a manufacturing design, a factory design perspective, the more co-located they can get with the cell and the pack, and then the insertion into the full module or key kind of the full rack, the better off they are. So you could see cell assembly there. I mean, Tesla's working on their own LFP. Again, I'm just purely speculating, but if I were doing this, I would want to get those two operations as close as possible.
Right, absolutely. And I didn't have a chance to look at a map or anything. Like I say, I've been running hard. Do we know is Katy or is this location near a waterway or is this something that might have to be trucked or what do you think?
Well, if it's near Houston, that's a big port. So,
Okay, near the port.
um, well, I haven't looked at a map either. I've been back to back today, but I saw the announcement. It's exciting. Again, this is a really underserved TAM. It's huge,
Right.
and it's interesting. I just see people on X, and and there's another company too I follow and I cover, EOS, and people are
Yes.
like just EOS versus Tesla. I'm like, you don't have to worry about that. There are
Yeah.
different spaces. There's different tech. There's a huge TAM as it relates to battery storage. And I think both companies are going to do very well. Tesla is on another level in terms of their capacity, in terms of their software, and in terms of some of the really some of the applications that they can serve. But there's going to be multiple areas where I think a lot of these companies can fit in, especially in this long duration storage, the ability to cycle batteries. These are all like there's critical elements to this. These utilities need this. I mean, we're just becoming a very power hungry with what's going on with data center and just everything. So yeah, there's just
And
they
this
could keep
also
build they could build another one.
yeah, this also answers the other question that are let's say answers the feeling I had that this will always be near a port. And that in this particular case, we'd be talking about an East Coast port. So we could
Yeah.
be servicing Europe, and we could be servicing the East Coast of South America, et cetera. So we have or the East Coast of the United States even from there in terms of setting things up by ship, because that's really the only way to transport these massive
Well,
products.
I think it's scale. There's going to be a lot of issues with supply chain localization, even though everybody says that there's tons of LFP cells available, but there's export restrictions, there's import restrictions, there's all kinds of tariffs everywhere. So I would envision end state that you're going to see these on every continent. I don't think that they want to. Uh, y- yeah, I mean there could be some areas where you would want port access really for inbound material as well. That's the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. But yeah, I end state. I see these on multiple continents, and this capacity build out is going to play out over a number of years.
So you bring up a couple of interesting thoughts that I hadn't even come to think through fully. With the tariff situation, and you and I have talked about tariffs week after week after week, but we've been talking about the tariffs more on the cars or more on the other issues that are associated with in terms of the general inflation, price increases, et cetera. But Elon has been theoretically setting up a lot of battery production in the United States. So we've got the lithium plant, we've got the um, uh, cathode plant in Texas. We've got the huge Panasonic facility already going with the other 40 CATL gigawatt hours of capacity that we bought from them, which we haven't heard anything about for a long time. And then
I'll get to ask the questions on the call. Yeah, to get those
and they
answers.
should
Yeah.
definitely be asking this question on the call. And then they talked about 500 gigawatt capacity at Reno in terms of 4680s as well. But now with the potential tariffs, it would seem like all of that would get top of mind.
Yes. Yeah. Tesla said on the earnings call, the Q4 earnings call, we have a battery supply problem. We are allocating, but they said between stationary and mobile, which are, the battery packs versus, sorry, stationary mega packs versus automobiles.
Right.
And eventually that will be Optimus too. That'll be in that allocation mix.
Right.
So Tesla has a problem. I think what they're doing is when a company comes on and says they have a problem, I think he's more. It could be a near term like right now problem, but he could also be speaking about in context with the volume for the entire year, and also anticipating and really just having companies do this when they do their supply planning. They have a base case of like, look, we think these tariffs are going on. We think these export restrictions are going on. Just put it in your base case and net out the supply. So yeah, Tesla has to accelerate 4680. The dry process, they've got to accelerate that because that gets them to a much smaller process, something that's a lot more modular that they can pick up and install in all the car factories. And then the LFP side, I don't think they're going to ramp the cat. I could be wrong.
Oh.
I think the cattle capex was kind of a backup. Um, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe there's some way they're going to use it. There's going to be some sort of hybrid approach, but I think they want to use their own IP, and maybe some of that capex is going to be helpful. But I think what Tesla wants is they want an untariffed cost structure for LFP in the United States to be equivalent or better than China.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be copying CATL's China process and bringing it here. So I think that's what they're working on. They need LFP. They have Panasonic. They have the 46. They have the 2167. They have multiple cell types, but they really need to get 4680 and LFP to scale. I think those are the two uber objectives.
All right. So staying on the subject of tariffs, I know I've seen you making lots of comments on X with regard to this current situation, which changes every minute. The most recent change was earlier today. The car companies have convinced Mr. Trump, President Trump, they've convinced him to give them another month to solve their
They're
production
not going to solve
problem.
anything in a month. They're just going to build inventory. They have, they have, I mean, I'm sure there's a couple of parts they can move,
Yeah.
but when you have these engines and transmissions and these complex supply chains, and you've got a 4 or 5 year design cycle, they have some serious problems. They almost need a new generation of vehicle that's designed for United States
Mm.
sourcing and assembly, and they do it in a way where they're deleting parts, they're combining processes, and they're doing it in a way where they can hit the cost structure. They've been using Mexico because of the USMCA, they've been using Mexico as a crutch.
Yeah.
And I've been all over X for the last month, basically saying, I can't believe these auto CEOs aren't losing their mind. Well, they were, but they were just calling the president, and they convinced him to get a little bit more time. If I were doing these tariffs, and it's for the reasons I described, which is basically you're going to put the unit, you're going to destroy the U.S. auto industry while you're trying to get them to move back. And literally, they're going to move back, and they're not going to have anything structurally that's profitable, and the companies are going to be destroyed, and you're not going to have. It doesn't matter. There's going to be no factories to move back. There's going to be nothing to move back to, because they don't know how to make a product profitably here. So they have to regroup, and they've got to figure this out. I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of incentive package. That would be interesting. And then he announced in the address last night something around tax, some sort of rebate or some sort of um,
Not being
on
taxed. Yeah.
yes, on car interest loans if it's made in the U.S., and just how that would work with the standard deduction. But the economics don't work right now for U.S. auto industry. That's why 3 out of every 10 cars they make, they're assembling in Mexico. And that's why most of the high dollar even if they are doing final assembly here, that's why a lot of their high dollar sub assemblies are done in Mexico. Anything that's got high labor content, long process times, they're doing it down in Mexico because the labor rates there they're set at $16 minimum for the USMCA. And it would be much lower, actually, by the way,
Yeah,
if it
right.
wasn't for that.
Yeah.
And the USMCA thought that they were going to level the playing field by setting a $16 wage requirement. And here, now with the unions, they're paying $50, $60 in some cases. So the unions are happy. The unions like these tariffs, but I tell you, it's just they have to be put on in a more constructive way where you don't destroy the target market while you're trying to save it. Because in the end, if they just followed through and just went through with the tariffs, the Western European countries, the Korean countries, Korea right now can ship a sedan in here without a tariff.
Yeah.
So yeah, so all you would do is you would destroy Ford, GM, Stellantis. You would be uplifting Tesla because they're mostly sourced in the U.S. Tesla does have parts in Mexico. They have parts in Canada, but it's the lower dollar parts. So if you hit a $4 part with a tariff, you're not losing your mind.
Right.
When you hit a $40,000 Mach-E with a 25% tariff, it's a different conversation.
It's a whole nother deal. So, all right, that's interesting. I wasn't quite as aware, I guess, as I should have been. So I was thinking more this was happening at the Canadian border with the parts going over and back and over and back that I think you and I talked about a while back. Is there a significant problem in Canada also in terms of interrupting the U.S. maker's supply chain?
Yes, I mean there are parts that we get from Mexico. There are also final assembly plants for Honda, for Toyota, and for I think GM. And so yeah, Canada's a problem too. The back and forth components are mostly with Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Mexico has a lot of the sub assemblies.
I see.
But yeah, so anyway, this was a real like this is really setting up. I mean, if these went on, they stayed on within 2 weeks, they would have been shutting down, and you would have started seeing literally hundreds of thousands of people getting furloughed or laid off. And there's only like 150,000 people. By the way, this is what people don't understand. There's almost 3 million people tied to the auto industry in the US,
Uh-huh.
but only 150,000 of them are doing or final assembly at Ford, GM, Stellantis, and some of the other companies. Most of those other people are in the suppliers,
Mhm. Yeah.
and they're connected to dealerships and things like that. But that's where most of the other people are. So yeah, if you 25% tariff a lot of the stuff coming over the border, you would start destroying the jobs back here because the economics would be flipped upside down on many of the cars, and then they would just stop importing the material. But now these starts and stops are a real problem. We had a start and stop in, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, And then now we have another one here. And what you have, and one of the reasons they're asking for another month is I just think they're just building a lot of inventory.
Okay. But at the end of the day, I hate the word, but you have to use it once in a while. We don't think that Trump is going to want to destroy manufacturing in the United States, certainly not the auto industry. At the end, at the same end of the day, he's not going to want to have to deal with the negative press that would come from even creating a massive amount of chaos for months and months and months and months and months, even if they could somehow survive it. So I'm a little surprised. I'm not going to just wave the flag in front of myself all the time and say, oh, Trump doesn't do anything wrong. I'm a little surprised that he's leaving it up in the air when the reality is it's not going to happen. I mean, I don't see there's any way that he can allow it to go forward.
Yeah. Well, my recommendation would be is to look at the product area and put together a tariff schedule that gives the companies time. A lot of the people in government have never built a product before and don't understand product cycles, don't understand how supply chains are designed and made, and they're making these decisions. It was a really I'm normally pro this administration. This was a terrible decision, and what I would do. But I agree with the objective and I agree with end state. There's no reason why we can't have higher manufacturing content in the US. But ultimately, to do it the right way, I mean, I would give these companies like a minimum of a year. But what I would do is I would put a tariff on right now. I do escalating tariffs every quarter, and that would give them the incentive to if they could, if they could figure out how to do this sooner, maybe they could be under a different tariff structure. But in the end, I could say like right now, a year from now, you are going to have a 25% tariff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll start with 5% this quarter, and we'll give you time to move your supply chains, and then we'll give Mexico time to give to do other things for us, and maybe some things don't have to move. Maybe at the end, it's a different tariff structure, but you got to give these companies time to execute. And really, there's a 1 year thing is not even enough time. I mean, ultimately, they would need to do an entire new product generation. There would need to be a new Chevy Equinox that was not designed for assembly in Mexico. And they would have to do some radical things with their product. This is why when we talk about Tesla, it's not easy what they're doing. It's not easy building these 650,000 cars in the United States. It's not easy. It's right. They have the biggest auto factory in North America. It's not easy to do it profitably, and that's what you're seeing. Even if these other car companies are doing final assembly in the U.S. on some models, like the Ford F-150 electric, for example, is made in Dearborn, Michigan. A lot of the modules are coming out of Mexico.
So I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and again, my limited manufacturing background is in very small products, but we were able to be quite profitable in the United States manufacturing plastic products. Is with the way things are going in manufacturing in terms of AI, in terms of printing, 3D printing, all the different techniques that we now have, robots coming. Shouldn't we technically, theoretically be able to make that motor in the United States close to what we can make for in Mexico?
Well, theoretically, could we? We should be able to, but you need you need to design. People think you can just design automation and make automation do anything. And that's not the case. You actually have to design for the automation, and these products clearly aren't, or otherwise they'd be up here.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to design for that automation. If you get to an end state but then you're not really moving up as many jobs because you have a lot of automation. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but the idea is to get more of a larger piece of the pie in the US. And even if there are less net jobs with it being highly automated versus not, the more of that pie, the larger the pie you make in the US, the more jobs you will have here versus not having the part here at all.
Right.
So, but yeah, you've got to design for that automation. Tesla, the Tesla high dollar modules are all made next to or in the factory. The one I'm still confirming, I'm getting conflicting info on, is the AI computer. I wouldn't be surprised if that would be done in Mexico, but quite frankly, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but a PCBA testing and then that chassis assembly, what that computer goes into, would be very easy to move to the
Okay.
US. I'm not trying to oversimplify
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
they should be able to move that. And by the way, every single capability to build that computer, they have all the manufacturing tech basically in the Bay Strip factory to make Starlink. So obviously it's different test equipment. I get it. I know all that, but I'm just saying like the general framework of the factory and flow, they could do that there. So yeah, Tesla is different than Ford and GM and Stellantis is because they have a high amount of automation, a high amount of vertical integration, and they take their high dollar assemblies and they do them next to the factory. So they're in the US.
Right.
The lower dollar stuff, the wire harnesses, maybe some door handles, those are coming out of Mexico.
What about the other companies? We've got, Honda and Hyundai and Kia. I mean, we've got other
Yeah.
Japanese and Korean and
Yeah. They're building in Mexico. Hyundai's the number four. The Ionic is the number four selling EV in the US. And those are made in South Korea. Now they're moving. They're building a plant in Georgia,
Georgia.
but
Yeah.
they're not ready.
Okay.
So that one's moving over. But yeah, three of the top 10 EVs in the US are made in Mexico.
Okay.
The Mach-E, the Chevy Equinox, and one other one are made in Mexico. Tesla sells the three of the top five Tesla sells between 3Y and Cybertruck. Obviously, they're all made in the US. The Mach-E is number three currently, but I think that one's fading. That's made in Mexico. And then Cybertruck, Ionic, and then Cybertruck. But anyway, summary is three of the top 10 selling EVs and about 50,000 units of 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 manufacturing, I think per year. Yeah, quarter per year. I think it's per quarter actually. I have to look it up. I think it's per quarter. They're made in Mexico. And those are all Model 3, Model Y type vehicles. I think one's the Honda EV, the Prelude EV, one's the Chevy Equinox, and one's the Ford Mach-E. So anyway, if those run into problems from a unit economics perspective, and but anyway, now you have this month to figure things out.
Right.
So
Okay. So we had a State of the Union address last night. Were you thoroughly impressed as I was? I'm going to tell you right away that I thought it was one of the best State of the Unions I've ever heard.
yeah, and I heard there was just a tremendous amount of noise and commotion if you were in the hall.
Right.
Like it was very distracting, I guess. And the president had to stop a few times. They had to stop. So I think that's uncalled for. I think that there's a certain amount of. I know Republicans have done some stupid things in the past too, but last night was just bizarre. But I thought the message was really good. And I just think a lot of things have been done the first 40 days. There's a lot of results to show, but there needs to be this connection of we're doing these things, and what end state looks like. Maybe it's a couple months from now, maybe it's a year from now. Like things are gonna cost less for you, and you're gonna be safer. Like if they can connect on those two messages, I think it's great. I think there's some trepidation based on, we're 40 days in. Everything that's in the CPI and PPI was made and decisions were made in the prior administration. But yeah, prices are still high.
Yeah. Yeah. But we do see oil coming down. We do see
Oil coming
interest
down.
rates coming down, and those are two of the keys. I mean, if you get oil
Yes.
down and interest rates down, you're almost guaranteed to start to see the rest of things come down, barring weird things like what's happening with eggs and whatnot.
Yeah. And I think you're going to have some weird stuff here with tariffs too.
Yeah.
By the way, I think some companies, even before the tariffs went on, started putting price increases on, almost like a banking function of like, if I could sell, I always look at the 5 or 6 pack of avocados at Costco that used to be $5.99. Then it jumped to like 7.99 for no reason. Like there was no new tariffs put on. It just jumped. Okay, what happened? Now it's 9.99. I always look at some of these things and kind of just try to gauge what's happening. Um, and just, but yes, companies are either building inventory, they're front running pricing. There's a lot of weird stuff. I think CPI and PPI are going to start getting distorted a bit, but we'll see how it goes. I'd I'd like for them to present some clarity, and then if they're going to apply the tariffs, they need to have a tariff schedule that aligns with a reasonable time to move a supply chain and not destroy the underlying business.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And that would be true of things beyond automotive. Automotive just happens to be a huge, business,
Yeah,
but everybody's got the same issue if they're manufacturing or even in agriculture. I mean, you can't decide this year you're going to plant something else if you're already in for the beginning of March. You're
yeah. That
done.
was two of my meetings today, Randy, which with really big operations, and basically like where do we go?
Yeah.
Like where do we go? Because you know, yeah, it's China, it's Canada, China, Mexico right now, but who's the second wave? And that's what a lot of companies are trying to really think through right now.
Interestingly, I was at one of my clients today who's a bike shop, of course. I have other clients too, but my one client's a bike shop, and he hadn't noticed, but he had a brand new Trek, American company who makes almost no bicycles in America anymore, but had been making them all in China. This one was made in Cambodia. Had it right on there. So a lot of other Southeast Asian
Interesting.
countries are getting the business. Mexico, we know, has become a powerhouse of manufacturing. So China is already,
Mexico, Vietnam, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we were both shocked by that. We didn't have a clue that because I've watched in my career the bicycle business go from the United States to Taiwan, I'm sorry, to Japan, to Taiwan, to China, and now
Yeah.
apparently to some of the other Southeast Asian countries. So, yeah, you move because things change.
Yeah. And Japan and Taiwan are brilliant at manufacturing. So yeah, Africa, parts of Africa, that's part of Belt and Road with China. So I think it's going to get really interesting on the tariff side.
All right. Well, my last question for you today, because I know you have to run to the next thing, is we've been tossing it around as to which happens first, and you kind of alluded to it. Do we get the interest rates and the oil rates and some of the other things down in time to stimulate the economy so that the economy is starting to grow before we get the impact of the layoffs and the government spending hurting the
No, unfortunately, I understand. I think I understand what the administration's trying to do, but there's a really long and variable lag with interest rates. I mean, we're going to have damage ahead of us that was set from decisions made 18 months ago. So, yeah, even if the real time interest rates come down, it's going to help with some things, but man, there's still a lag on that data. And same with the on the oil side. I mean, you're going to get some immediate effect, but some of these supply chains where oil's the input are long. So an ideal world is you would like you'd like the Fed to look at trueflation. You'd like to look at the fact that there's job reports that are really showing major cracks. We'll see what the actual non-farm payroll comes in at tomorrow. But you had ADP coming in at less than half today. And you'd like for them to act sooner than just being late all the time. They're late. They're late
right,
to put
right.
rates on. They're going to be late to take them off. And that would be, kind of the best of both worlds. So it's interesting. I don't understand what's going on with the Atlanta Fed. I think it's a non-credible process to say that, your GDP drops 5% in a week. It's like you would like, I know a lot of data came out. I know a lot of things were a point here, a point off there,
Yeah.
but we had good ISM services today. I don't
And
understand how you have a
manufacturing.
process like
And
that.
manufacturing wasn't bad. Manufacturing was
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't understand how you have a process where you have a line and in one week it drops 5%. To me, like again, did COVID-25 hit? Like what happened in that week from an
Yeah.
input perspective to have you do that? To me, something there just seems like nonlinear.
So I don't know if you know this. I did not know this until I asked Grok. 100% of that number that's coming out of the Atlanta Fed is nothing but input of the data. No analysis, no backing out anything because of bad weather or anything. You take the numbers that are coming off those reports, they plug them in, and whatever the number is, that's what it is, according to Grok.
Yeah, and people should just keep in mind. That's why I always say, I forward that Atlanta Fed around. I'm just like, you really have to ask the critical questions and understand what you're looking at. Same conversation with, Tesla's Q1 and
Right.
European sales in January, February. Just you have to get through the basics and ask the basic questions. And if you want to start speculating about brand damage, then fine, but at least get the basics out of the way. Tesla, I put an excerpt of the earnings call. Like Tesla said, there's gonna be several weeks. They didn't say a few weeks. They didn't say 1 week. They said several weeks of downtime of a product that they make 29,000 a week of.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Didn't think of that.
I think people need to. I can't believe there wasn't a single analyst question on this because it was in VBob's opening, the CFO's opening statement on the call of like, we've never seen a transition. I mean, this is a major transition, the number one selling vehicle in the industry, and it's gonna be several weeks. That's what it says in the text.
Right.
There's no follow up. There's no follow up. But what do you mean by several weeks? Is that more than 3? Is it less than 6? Same thing. No question. We said they're battery constrained. No question from the analysts. Just really bizarre to me. So
That was
hopefully we
great.
get some answers soon.
Well, I know you have to blast away, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you as always for coming on and appreciate all your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, and we will now turn to the numbers. So what happened today? Well, you probably know that in the day started with the everything looking like it was going to go. It started high, then it went south, and then everything recovered. So we ended up with Tesla up 7, with the Dow up almost 500, with the Nasdaq up 267, and with the S&P up 64. So again, quite the day. Tesla ended up $7 for the day. In the after hours, down 30 cents. A little surprising. We saw a big jump at the end of the day, which I thought might have been the news about the megafactory in Texas. But then it's down 35 cents in the after hours. It would seem like we would have had a continuation if it was about the megafactory. So maybe not. Maybe that was not what made it jump. And why isn't it? I mean, that's a massive, massive amount of additional revenue and profits coming, even if it's only a 10,000 unit per year facility. And they said it's going into an existing building. It's not going to take them that long to get it up and running. All right, let's go ahead. Unfortunately, because the news was good for a lot of things today, it means that the bonds headed back up again. And what we're looking at today is we're back to 4.311. This is not good. We're up 4.5 basis points in the after hours, much less or pre-market, much less what it was already up today. So back to 4.311. All that ground that we had gained, getting down as low as 4.1. And now we're back to 4.3. So sadly, a good economy means that the folks that are buying these bonds are going to say, nope, sorry, I'm out. And so the rates go up. We go to the oils. We got the oils are up 20 cents in the pre-market, but overall nicely down at $66.51 on Texas Intermediate and 69. It's right now the Brent is not open, but it closed earlier today at 69.30. Natural gas came a little bit off after a couple of good days, is sitting down 0.18% in the pre-market at 4.44. Gold up a little bit more. It's just kind of creeping up $2.40, sitting at 29.28. Silver up 32.32 at 33.24, and so getting closer and closer to 34. And copper back up a little bit, 0.29, sitting at $4.80. That's still a very strong number for copper. You got Bitcoin recovering today. I thought I heard it was higher than this earlier. I wasn't. I was running all over town today, jumping through hoops for my clients. But Bitcoin right now 2,574, sitting at 90,399, and the equities for tomorrow morning basically unchanged on the Dow and the S&P, and very close to unchanged, but slightly down on the NASDAQ at 0.17 down going into the early pre-hours. So we will continue, I think, to see this kind of chaos. It's Nicholas Gibbs last night thought that it would all end by Friday, and I think he showed a lot of wisdom in contemplating that that's how things could turn out. But I'm not so sure that the chaos will end by Friday. I think we will probably be looking at chaos going forward for a bit longer than that. As again, I think what we left out of the previous conversation just now with Jeff is I think President Trump desires, I've said this before, he doesn't want anybody to be comfortable right now. He wants everybody to be uncomfortable, even consumers, even voters. He wants the chaos, the uncertainty. Right now, that's what he wants because he wants everybody to get on board. It's not like you need the chaos to cause people to say, boy, I wish we didn't have chaos. But what you do need is the chaos to get people to think about the process, to think about what was wrong with what we've been doing, the way we've been doing it for the last 50 years. I mean, literally 70 years. Really, ever since World War II, the United States has been saying, okay, we're going to help you guys out. We'll help you out. We'll help you out. We've been, sending our resources, letting them have high tariffs, letting them protect their industries. And I think Trump has decided that's over. It's time for everybody to be on the same playing field, or at least more of a level playing field than we've been on. And everybody's been like, okay, United States, you take care of us and you protect us with your armies and your navies and your ships and your nuclear weapons and everything else. And you go ahead and pay a big price out of your annual budget. And then we can just really be successful. We can have free colleges and free healthcare, but you can't because you're paying for our military expenses. So I think he said, okay, that's enough of that. We need that to be on a level playing field as well. And he wants people to be thinking like that. He wants them to be thinking, I would have never thought of it. I never considered the idea that we would have this reset. I never knew it was on his mind to do this international reset of the way that the countries are playing with one another, dealing with one another, and nobody else saw it coming either. You can tell because everybody around the world is looking like a deer in the headlights. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to respond, and that's what he wants. I really believe that's what he wants. Gives him a huge advantage in terms of negotiation. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think that's what's going on? I really believe that's what's going on. And I think when all the dust settles, the United States is going to be in a way better position in all of those things we just talked about. We're going to be better off in terms of manufacturing at home. We're going to be better off in terms of the agreements we have with these different countries in terms of tariffs. We're going to be better off in terms of the amount that we have to spend on the military. And once all that happens, then he can go to phase 2, which is where he goes to Russia and China and says, let's cut our military budgets in half. Imagine if that is the legacy that he leaves us with is once they eliminate all nuclear weapons, once they have peace in the Middle East, and wants to cut our military budget in half. I mean, if that's all he did in 4 years, I think that would be a success. And I don't understand why the Democrats are not even remotely in line with that kind of thinking. It's just common sense. And with those words, I'll let you know that Brian Wang is going to be on later tonight. You're not going to want to miss this. I think we're going to be talking about Optimus because Brian Wang is going to become the new expert He's going to become my expert, my go-to expert on Optimus. He is going to make sure that he is 100% up to date on Optimus, on the competition, on the direction of the product. Who better than Brian Wang to do that? So Brian's going to, I think that's what we're going to do tonight. So pay attention, 7:45. I'll put that up. And then last night was, earlier today, rather, nobody watched it. So Brian White was on, and he and I talked about what's going on in terms of the headwinds versus the tailwinds. Are some of the headwinds fake news, or some of the fake, even if they're fake news, are they actually impacting the stock right now? And so he and I went through, some of you have probably heard my list of the 18 reasons, why the stock might be down. But this time I wanted Brian White to respond to it and hear what he had to say about those ideas, because I think all of those 18 ideas, some of them might be a little bit and some of them might be a lot. Some of them may look like they're impacting the stock, but maybe not at all. So I encourage you, I'll put the card up, go back and take a look at that. I ran it in the middle of the day because there was no time last night because of the speech. And so it was sitting there and it was getting lonely, and it wanted to come out of its box. So I put it on this afternoon. Normally, of course, I only put on clips and stuff in the middle of the day. All right, that's all I got for you right now. I will see you with Brian Wang in just a little while. It's been great talking to you.